If you are joining us now, you likely know what it feels like to live a life constantly saying yes, where your heart screams no. You may have achieved success, built a family, raised children, yet at some point, you discovered that your personal territory, your inner space, is continually being invaded. This might be in the form of requests from relatives you feel compelled to fulfill, persistent criticism from a partner you tolerate, or society's demand to conform to an ideal that feels utterly foreign to you. We are talking about that invisible, yet absolutely necessary barrier, which cleanly separates yourself from the rest of the world. The true problem is not with the people around us, the issue lies within our internal mechanism that paralyzes us at the crucial moment. Why is it that, as adult and self-sufficient people, we experience a burning sense of guilt or a panicked fear of rejection when we simply need to protect our time, our desires, or our finances? This paralysis is not accidental. Its roots run deep into the layers of our psyche, formed during a time when our very survival depended on the approval of others. For the mature audience, for those over 40, this topic becomes critical. In youth, we might have afforded to be pliable in the pursuit of love, career, or social standing. But now that primary goals have been met, the cost of unset boundaries increases exponentially. Violated boundaries drain our strength, lead to emotional burnout, spoil intimate relationships, and, most sadly, prevent us from knowing who we truly are, what we want, and where we should go next. Our dignity demands that we finally learn to say no without agonizing guilt or internal trembling. If you are ready for a deep, honest conversation about how to reclaim your inner power and protect yourself without turning into a cold or selfish person, then you have come to the right place. Our channel is devoted to serious, academic psychology, the kind that offers not quick tricks, but fundamental understanding and long-term, profound change. If you value depth of thought and wisdom, please support us with your like and subscription, so this vital conversation can reach others who need it. Today, we will turn to the legacy of a distinguished contemporary psychoanalyst, Nancy McWilliams. Her works are a kind of roadmap for the structure of our soul and our relationships. She teaches us that our capacity to set boundaries is not a superficial communication skill, but a reflection of the deep personality structure. If this structure is damaged or undeveloped, no polite phrases will help, because internally, we have already surrendered. McWilliams views personal boundaries as a fundamental pillar of psychological health. She shows that problems with boundaries are not just an inability to say no, they are evidence that we have not fully achieved separation from the significant figures of our childhood. In early life, the boundary between the child and the caregiver was conditional, our feelings, needs, and even thoughts were perceived as something shared. A healthy psyche gradually forms a clear line, realizing, I am me, and you are you. My feelings are mine, and yours are yours. It is precisely this awareness that allows us to live, love, and refuse freely. When the boundary is violated, we begin to use primitive psychological defenses unconsciously. McWilliams describes in detail how a person unable to set a boundary begins either to merge with those around them or to reject them aggressively. Let us consider the mechanism of merging, which is common in people willing to sacrifice themselves. The person who cannot say no to a request is, in reality, fighting a primary fear of abandonment. In their psyche, the refusal is perceived not as, I cannot help you right now, but as, if I say no, they will stop loving me, I will lose the connection, and I will be left alone. To avoid this emotional catastrophe, they merge with the other's need, ignoring their own. Their inner world becomes permeable, they feel the other person's guilt, the other person's anxieties, the other person's expectations, as if they were their own. Imagine your adult child asks you for a large financial loan. Although you know it is unwise. If your boundaries are weak, you will not see their request as their separate problem, you will feel their despair as if it were yours, their guilt for asking, as your own guilt for not being able to give. You will hand over the money not out of common sense, but to avoid your own inner pain caused by the other person's emotional state. But a boundary is not a wall built out of aggression. A healthy, intimate boundary allows you to be close, yet remain separate. It allows you to hear the pain of the other, but not carry it, to respect the other's opinion, but not allow it to supplant your own. The boundary is a filter that allows love and support to pass through, but stops manipulation, criticism, and unwanted demands. The process of restoring boundaries begins with the realization that our refusal or our no does not destroy the world or ruin relationships, provided those relationships are based on mutual respect. If a relationship collapses because of your refusal, it means it was built from the start not on genuine affection, but on your compliance and functionality. McWilliams teaches us that our maturity is the capacity to take responsibility for our own feelings and our own space, and this has absolutely nothing to do with selfishness. When we discuss the inability to establish intimate boundaries, according to Nancy McWilliams, we are talking about the persistence of pre-personal experiences in our adult life. Our psyche, like an old hard drive, stores the early belief, survival is possible only if I am as convenient as possible for the significant other. Our task in maturity is not simply to learn a few refusal phrases, but to rewrite this deep-seated code. McWilliams demonstrates that people with diffuse or violated boundaries often resort to projective identification. This is an extremely complex, and unfortunately, very common psychological mechanism. It operates as follows: you cannot tolerate a certain unpleasant feeling of your own, for instance, your own aggression, because good people don't get angry, or your own greed, because one should always share. You unconsciously expel this feeling onto another person and then provoke them to act in accordance with that feeling. Imagine being exhausted after work and feeling irritation from a neighbor's loud music, but you're unable to communicate this directly to protect your peace. The internal prohibition is active: I mustn't be confrontational. Your unexpressed aggression and tension don't vanish. They might lead you to behave in a markedly passive way or, conversely, to demonstrably crash dishes loudly. The neighbor, sensing this nonverbal aggression in your tension, starts to genuinely get annoyed and, perhaps, turns the music up even louder. At that moment, you experience an internal relief: see, he is the bad one, he is aggressive and disrespects me. I was just suffering in silence. Thus, you avoided responsibility for your own aggression, which you couldn't accept, but your boundaries were violated even more, and the relationship deteriorated. This is an endless, self-destructive cycle. To break this cycle, we need to master the capacity for separation. This means recognizing that your feelings and the feelings of others are two distinct realities. McWilliams emphasizes that the mature personality relies on relatively stable self-regard. When we say no, we must internally feel, my refusal does not make me a bad person. The immature personality, deprived of this stability, often resorts to idealization and devaluation. This is another powerful factor that destroys boundaries. At the beginning of a relationship, friendship, work, or personal, such a person idealizes the partner: they are perfect, they will solve everything, I trust them completely. This is a complete erasure of boundaries through admiration. Idealization always demands merging. But when the partner inevitably makes a mistake or asks for a favor in return, they are instantly devalued: they are terrible, they betrayed me, I must push them away and protect myself. Healthy boundary setting, conversely, requires seeing the other person holistically. With their flaws, their virtues, and, most importantly, with their separateness. If your partner demands something unacceptable, you must be able to say no while continuing to love or respect them. You separate their action from their person. You say, I love you, but I cannot give you my money, or my time, or my consent. This is a mature boundary, acceptance of the other while maintaining your own self. McWilliams also draws our attention to the phenomenon of inner emptiness, which is often disguised as a need to be needed. Many people over 40, realizing they cannot set a boundary, try to fill this inner void by complying with others' demands. They overload themselves with tasks, take on others' responsibilities, just to avoid being alone with themselves and confronting that emptiness. In this case, the boundary is not set because the function of serving others becomes the only way to feel alive and necessary. For us, this means that work on boundaries is not just work on external behavior, but work on strengthening internal worth. If you feel your value regardless of how useful you are to others, saying no becomes much easier. If your self is stable, the disappointment or even anger of others cannot shake your foundation. In the next part, we will examine exactly how we can start building this internal pillar without destroying our closest relationships. We have established that our inability to set boundaries does not stem from a lack of politeness, but from a deficit of internal support that forces us to avoid conflict at the cost of our own exhaustion. Nancy McWilliams' work demonstrates that for mature individuals dealing with complex, long-term relationships, marital, parental, professional, it is essential to master the principle of mature confrontation. This is neither aggression nor attack, but a calm, firm, yet affectionate declaration of one's separateness. To begin, it is crucial to understand that the fear of conflict is often the fear of losing love or approval. This fear, as we discussed, is embedded in the early psychic structure. To overcome it, McWilliams suggests mastering the mechanism of discernment. Discernment means you learn to separate the other person's need from their manipulative behavior or negative reaction. Imagine the scenario: you tell a loved one no to a request for financial support because it would harm your own plans. In response, they begin to act offensively, cry, or accuse you of being heartless. The immature personality instantly merges with these feelings, takes on the guilt, and retreats by saying yes. The mature personality, relying on discernment, does the following. Acknowledges the need: I see you are upset, and I know this is hard for you. This does not negate their pain. Separates their decision from the other's reaction: your distress is your reaction to my decision. My decision remains firm because it is right for me. This avoids taking on responsibility for the other's feelings. Maintains the boundary while offering an alternative: I won't give you the money, but I am willing to help you find a counselor or draw up a budget. The boundary is maintained, but respect is preserved. The key point here is the capacity to tolerate the other person's disappointment and anger without feeling responsible for their emotions. McWilliams argues that a healthy personality is capable of experiencing anxiety when they are rejected, but does not slide into the panic of abandonment. It is precisely this difference between anxiety, a normal feeling, and panic, a destructive feeling, that determines whether you will hold your boundary firm. Another significant mechanism that prevents us from setting boundaries is the conviction of our omnipotent responsibility. This is the feeling that you are obligated to solve the problems of everyone you love. This is a legacy of that childhood period when you felt that your parents' well-being depended on your behavior. To break this conviction, it is necessary to master positive regression. This means you consciously give yourself the right to your own weakness and to the need for help from others. The person who always says yes never gives others the opportunity to care for them, thereby denying themselves the right to human vulnerability. When you allow yourself to say, I'm exhausted, I cannot do this right now, or I need help too, you are not only protecting your boundary, but also making the relationship more honest and reciprocal. You transition from the role of the omnipotent rescuer to the role of an equal partner. McWilliams emphasizes that for mature individuals, especially those who have raised children or been in leadership positions, the renunciation of omnipotence is the most difficult, but also the most healing step. If you constantly take on others' responsibilities, it does not make you a better person, it only strengthens your illusion of control and ultimately leads to exhaustion. A healthy boundary means, I am responsible for myself and my actions, and you are responsible for yourself and your actions. Finally, the work on boundaries is closely linked to authenticity. You cannot know where you end and the other person begins if you do not know who you truly are. This implies that you must consciously cease using the false self, that mask of convenience and perfection that you wore to gain approval. Boundaries are the means to communicate your true self to the world. Only when you are honest with yourself can you be honest with others by saying no to what is not right for you. In the next part, we will examine concrete steps to strengthen this internal foundation without destroying relationships. We must move away from splitting, seeing others as purely good or purely bad, and merging toward suppression and humor. Suppression, not to be confused with repression or aggressive passivity, is a mechanism that allows the mature person to consciously put aside an unpleasant feeling or demand to focus on something more important. When you feel guilt after saying no, you don't need to immediately try to eat it away or work it off. You must acknowledge, yes, I feel guilt because I was taught to. It is uncomfortable, but I will not spend energy on this feeling now. I accept it as a fact, but I will continue to do what I believe is right. This process strengthens your autonomy. You manage the feeling, and the feeling does not manage your behavior. Humor, according to McWilliams, is the highest form of psychological defense. It is the ability to see the situation from an outside perspective, acknowledging its seriousness, but not allowing it to fully capture your emotions. Humor arises when you recognize the contrast between the drama of others' expectations and your own healthy, bounded reality. If someone tries to manipulate you by demanding a sacrifice, and you internally perceive the absurdity of that manipulation, you can choose not to enter an angry argument, but to respond with a light, firm, and distancing smile. Humor becomes a tool that allows you to maintain the boundary without destroying the relationship with aggression, instead channeling the tension toward a healthy distance. To build stable personal territory in maturity, McWilliams suggests focusing on 3 pillars of inner work. First, the development of the observing self. This is the capacity to constantly hold yourself in the position of an observer of your own reactions. When you feel you are about to say yes out of fear, the observing self must intervene and ask, whose fear is this? Is it mine, or is it a fear inherited from the child afraid of abandonment? This gives you the necessary pause between the stimulus, the request, and the reaction, the submission. Without this pause, the boundary is impossible. Second, the acceptance of limited responsibility. You must review your relationships with key figures, partner, adult children, parents, and internally, consciously, declare the return of their responsibility to them. You are not responsible for their happiness, their career, their financial well-being, and, most importantly, for their feelings about your refusal. Your responsibility is only for your own actions and your own boundaries. Third, the cultivation of genuine intimacy. True, healthy intimate relationships are only possible between 2 separate individuals. Boundaries are not the end of closeness. They are its beginning. If you can say no without guilt, you are giving your partner permission to be themselves, and yourself to be completely yourself. This makes closeness deep because it is based not on mutual dependence or fear, but on the free choice of 2 whole people. Thus, your no in maturity is not just a refusal, it is an affirmation of your personality. It is an act that declares to the world, I value myself. I exist separately. And I am responsible only for myself. This is perhaps the most important task facing us after 40, when time becomes the most precious and irreplaceable resource.